Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would review this little video and then I would talk about this little video, I believe, by Fight Hub TV. I do apologize for not posting as much as of lately. Unfortunately, I had to get some big things done in my personal life, within that of the past couple of weeks, and I'll still be busy for the next couple of weeks, but I still should be posting certain videos and projects very, very soon. I like my editing, to be pretty good. So at least, to the best of the ability that I can do it. So I'm trying my best overall with that. But anyways, that being stated, overall, I do apologize for not posting as of much as of lately, but I am still going to post a few times a week, before maybe I can post a little bit more and put other projects out there because I will have new work and other stuff like that. So hopefully I'll be able to post a little bit more and grow the channel a little bit more as well. But that being stated, overall, of course, for those of you that also see my channel, I am also going to go a little bit more into other spectrums. I'm also, of course, going to go into movies or movie reviews, video game reviews as well. Because, of course, anyone who knows me also knows that, I'm a big admirer of arts in general. But that being stated, before, I really talk about any of that, David Benavides had a very interesting little interview, I believe, with that. I believe this one dude is named Martin Villegas or Marlon Villegas, whatever his name is, with Fight Hub TV, and he was talking about Canelo Alvarez and the potentiality of, was Canelo Alvarez taking Terence Crawford seriously, and is that possibly why he ended up losing the fight, or why did Canelo Alvarez end up losing the fight in the first place? And of course, for those of you that had seen me, give my fight prediction, I thought that it was a fight that could have went either way, especially after Canelo Alvarez's last performance. I thought that if the fight happened a few years ago, that I would have favored Canelo Alvarez very heavily, but Canelo was starting to get a little bit more wear and tear. Now, is that the only reason why I thought that he lost the fight? No, and of course, there's no telling how great a form Crawford really was in because he was moving up a couple of weight classes and he was a fighter that was 38 years old. But we'll talk about that as the video goes along. But anyways, that being stated, after Terence Crawford beat Canelo Alvarez, of course, he is now looked at as one of the greatest fighters of all time. And of course, he's also looked at within the quote-unquote GOAT conversation, which of course is understandable. But David Benavides had some very interesting things to say. So let's see overall what he has to say. But anyways, let's get into it. Let's see what both gentlemen have to say.
I don't, I'm not focused on Canelo. I got my own stuff going on, but if there might be a way to make that fight happen. So, like I said, I'm not really worried about that. I'm just thinking about the fighters I got to take out. And imagine, I go in there and I do everything I say I'm going to do. I go in there, beat Yard. Then I go fight Bivol, or I go fight Better Beef, and I beat those two fighters. The fight with Canelo is 100 times bigger than it was back then.
Yeah, very, very true.
I mean, maybe, but that's going to be a lot of ifs. First of all, I'm not really quite sure if Canelo Alvarez, I'm not really even quite sure how great of a point he's still at in his career. I've been saying this, probably for the past couple of years, but Canelo Alvarez is really on his last legs. And you can really see it against Jaime Munguia and that of Edgar Berlanga, but of course we also really seen it against Terence Crawford. Now, is that me claiming that that's the only reason why he lost that fight, or that Crawford also is not on his last legs? No, of course not. But that being said, Canelo Alvarez, you can tell that he just doesn't have the same ability as what he once did. He's a lot slower. He doesn't have the same upper body movement. He does not really throw in combination anymore. He's someone overall that very obviously that he's a little bit more limited than what he once was. And I think overall that, the loss to Crawford, I think that, after taking a look at that fight, that there's a potentiality that maybe Crawford could have beat him even at his peak anyway. But I mean, the point overall is that it's a little bit hard to judge because I'm not sure that either fighter was at their absolute peak. But I do think that Crawford probably was in better form. But Crawford also just showed that he had a higher boxing intellect and better overall skills than Canelo Alvarez.
You saying that you feel like he didn't prepare at all? Like, do you guys, like, as fighters, when you have an opponent, like, that's not, like, the biggest name, like, does that run through your mind?
Not the biggest name, though. Crawford is a big...
That's what I'm saying.
I think it's just ego. It's just ego that he didn't think. I mean, he brought in Boots.
It would be, like, maybe, like, easier than what it turned out to be.
I think that... I don't know what he thought. You know what I mean? To be honest, but when you see a fighter... What did he throw the whole fight? Like 200 punches?
Yeah, he did throw a lot.
Bro, that's how you could tell that you don't go. I mean, okay, say you're going there trying to get, you're trying to get, what's that word say? You're trying to get ready, you're trying to get your groove. Yeah, if that doesn't work in the first 5 rounds, then you got to push it the next fucking 6 rounds, 6, 7 rounds.
Cruise control.
Yeah, exactly. And it just looks like that's how Canelo's been fighting these past fights. Even with William Skull, if things don't go his way, then he just kind of lets the fight go. Like it doesn't really look like he really wants to go and get it.
Well, people have overall been stating this about Canelo Alvarez for the past few fights. I mean, people overall will state that, well, Canelo Alvarez, he just doesn't really want to get it, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not really about wanting to get it or not. It's just that Canelo Alvarez just can't push the same pace anymore. He's someone that is 35 years old. He's really more like 40 years old in boxing years. And he's someone overall that is fighting guys a lot of the times that are bigger than him now. Crawford, of course, is not bigger than him necessarily. But he is someone overall, once again, that was more maneuverable and lighter and, faster than the average opponent that Canelo was used to. Now, what my question was about Crawford is that how was he going to be able to consistently keep stamina throughout the fight while dealing with Canelo Alvarez's power and possibly not being able to hurt Canelo? But surprisingly, he was able to hurt Canelo Alvarez, I believe, on a couple of occasions, and then on top of that, keep his stamina quite consistent.
Okay, and then let's put it like this: when he fought Caleb,
Which even with the best of athletes usually does not happen if they move up in weight,
Plant,
at least to a significant degree.
he was digging because Caleb Plant was kind of winning the first 6 rounds, and then he started to push. So I mean, that's what I feel like, what a Canelo that's ready looks like. You know what I mean? And
Well, I think that Canelo Alvarez was ready for Terence Bud Crawford. I would just claim that Canelo Alvarez did the best that he could for his age. I don't think that Canelo Alvarez could have done anything different for the fight. He even from the first round onwards, I took a look at Canelo Alvarez when he threw a left hook and I said, wow, he looks slow. Like I did. There was never any moment in the fight where I thought Canelo looked as fast as what he once did. That being stated, obviously, Terence Bud Crawford wasn't someone that looked the exact same either. He, obviously has suffered a little bit of a slowdown as well because he's 38 years old. But Canelo Alvarez does have the more wear and tear of the two. But that being stated, Crawford was the more maneuverable of the two fighters. Or, well, Canelo is very maneuverable, which is why Crawford, he only landed, I believe, about 21 to 22% in the fight. Canelo is still someone with excellent defense and great upper body movement. But Crawford's, combination with his feet and his excellent lead hand, it ended up proving overall to be a little bit too much for Canelo.
if you're the top fighter in the world, bro, how are you only throwing 200, 300 shots? A 12-round fight, they don't make sense. So is this...
Well, let me answer that. Let me answer that question, Mr. David Benavidez, because this is the reason why I predicted Alexander Usyk would beat Tyson Fury in the rematch. Many people overall stated, oh, Tyson Fury, he's going to be more prepared, and, overall, he really was, he was really winning that fight until the shot, blah, 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 but that wasn't the fight that I had seen. A fight that I had seen overall was with Tyson Fury, where he was slowing down and becoming more hittable as the rounds had went along because he was not used to such a maneuverable target like that of an Alexander Usyk. And the thing is this, if you're, the thing is that even if you don't throw as many punches, if you have to move your upper body or move your all-around body or move your feet, that takes that much extra energy out of you. So if you're facing an opponent, for example, like a Munguia or a Berlanga that does not maneuver around the ring or does not have the same amount of boxing IQ as that of a Terence Bud Crawford, similar with Fury, and that of an Alexander Usyk, you can face guys like Deontay Wilder or certain guys like that don't move around anywhere near as good or have as good a defense. But Tyson Fury, he had to react to a certain amount of feints, use his feet, and use his upper body movement to a greater degree. So that means that energy was taken off of him in places that the average person probably did not see. And it was the same thing with Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez, and I thought that his level of power and that it was going to be a bit too much for Terence Bud Crawford, but I also did state a possibility that there is a possibility, although I thought that it was a more slighter one, but it ended up being, the facts of the matter that Crawford, with his quicker speed and on top of that, overall a guy that was lighter in frame, he ended up being quicker than Canelo, and also with the reach, Canelo Alvarez had to move his upper body even more than what he had been used to in several years. And there was no way that he was going to keep consistent stamina or throw 400 to 500 punches in the fight in order to win. He would have to be the same form that I had seen him against, say, Danny Jacobs or certain things like that. And that's not the Canelo Alvarez of now.
I don't know anything about their camp, and I really don't care about anything they're doing over there, but that's what it looks like to me. When the punch output drastically goes down, that's how you could tell a fighter's not putting everything into it.
I think Canelo Alvarez is putting everything into it. I just think overall that, once again, that's pretty much all he can do at this age. And Crawford, of course, is not the same fighter as what he once was either. He's a little bit less maneuverable. He's someone overall that does not have quite the same speed anymore. Now, the question is that, when were these two fighters at their absolute peak and prime? I think that Canelo probably was at his absolute peak and prime, at around Danny Jacobs. And I think that Crawford was at his absolute peak and prime, probably around Sean Porter or somewhere around there. I think that, that probably would be a fair comparison. And the question would have been, would Crawford been able, would he have been able to defeat Canelo Alvarez, even at that point? I'm not quite sure. But I think that the fight still would have been relatively close if Crawford wouldn't have not dominated the fight because, his feet overall and on top of that, his speed just proved to be a lot for Canelo. And that lead hand especially, it was giving Canelo Alvarez fits, especially that reach.
Or maybe they might have seen better days. I know a lot of people have suggested that about Canelo. Like maybe he's not the fighter he was like 2-3 years ago.
He's definitely not. But the thing is that I'm not sure if Crawford is either.
I mean, you can't really say nothing like that, bro, because if you put age into it, then what's the excuse? Crawford's 38. He didn't fight in 2 years. So that's no excuse when somebody...
Right, I understand that, Mr. David Benavidez, and I'm not claiming overall that that's the reason why Canelo Alvarez lost the fight. But when you're also fighting consistently, that can at times make you sharper, that at times also can wear you a little bit out. So the point overall is that when we take a look at Canelo Alvarez, he's really more like 40 years old in terms of boxing years. Crawford is really more around, 35 years old, really in terms of boxing years, because he just doesn't have as much wear and tear as Canelo.
He wants to go get it, they'll go get it. So it's not like, oh, you know what I mean? I guess you could say that, you know what I mean? But I don't know, bro. Like, it's not my problem. That's just not my problem.
Yeah, man, it's just crazy for Crawford to do something like that. Like go up two weight classes.
Well, at the end of the day, do I believe that Canelo once again was at his absolute best form? No. But once again, I don't know if Crawford was either. He was off for over a year. On top of that, he's 38 years old. And he was someone, of course, moving up a multitude of weight classes. They're still more comparable in size than what most people let on. But the fact of the matter is that this fight will always be remembered as a Sugar Ray Leonard versus Marvin Hagler type of performance or type of fight, and it deserves to be. Crawford, at the end of the day, was not really supposed to win this fight. Even at this current moment in time, Canelo looked at the best shape that he had been in years. Of course, he wasn't the same fighter that he once was, but he still was good enough to possibly win, and he did not win.
We always knew Crawford was a great fighter, and that's how he reaches. He's always going to be he's made in the history books. He's going to be the greatest of all time because he's never lost that hunger, and he's always wanted to prove himself. So, when a fighter wants to prove himself, he'll prove himself.
You've seen a lot of people in the gym, David, and you've, while you were at the wild card, you've seen a lot of legends as well. I'm just, and this is kind of like a hot topic. I'm just kind of curious, like pound for pound, like skill for skill, like how does Terence match with Floyd in your opinion?
Before David Benavidez answers, if you were to ask me personally, I would probably say that Floyd Mayweather Jr. is the more skilled fighter compared to Crawford, but that doesn't always necessarily mean that you're going to win the fight just because you're the more skilled fighter. Size does matter, and on top of that, styles matter, and it would have been a very interesting fight because Floyd Mayweather and Crawford, one thing I'll state is this, they never really fought another quote-unquote slick black American style really of their era. Now, I know that certain people will say, well, Mayweather fought Sugar Shane Mosley and Crawford fought that Errol Spence. But Errol Spence is really someone that's a breakdown fighter. He's not someone that fights great in a multitude of ways. And Sugar Shane Mosley is someone that, he's a great fighter, but he's also a little bit too repetitive. He's someone that does not have a great defense. And he pretty much lost to a lot of elite level boxers that he fought. Miguel Cotto, Vernon Forrest, certain other guys like that. Anyway, it would have been very interesting to see a Crawford or a Mayweather versus a Sugar Ray Leonard or someone like that. Or a Pernell Whitaker.
I mean, they're both great fighters. They're just different fighters in their own way. They're I can't say one is better than the other one. They're both great fighters. I think, honestly, if you go to see what has been accomplished, and I'm gonna get a lot of shit for this too, but honestly, there could be the way where you put Crawford over Mayweather.
Is it the undisputed?
It definitely depends on what you look at. If you want to, of course, count Terence Bud Crawford, the fact that he's undisputed in 3 separate weight classes over Mayweather, then that is something overall, once again, that definitely can be attributed. Now, in my personal view, resume always trumps a little bit over accomplishments, at least in terms of, boxing, at least in terms of, how many belts you won and all that other stuff, but it depends. And Crawford, now that he beat Canelo Alvarez and also Errol Spence and a couple of other guys, he does have to be mentioned along guys like Mayweather. I don't know if he's quite on the level of Mayweather, in my personal view, but he's someone that is right there. And I would have absolutely loved to have seen that fight. That would have been one hell of a fight to see how Mayweather would have handled the puzzle of a Terence Bud Crawford, a southpaw, a guy that has, one-shot knockout power over, at least with either hand, that, at least for a Floyd Mayweather, would have been very interesting, and someone that has a severe high boxing IQ, someone that is extraordinarily intelligent, just like Floyd. I don't think that he's quite, as intelligent as what Floyd is, but he's right there.
Because of going up, you didn't see Mayweather go up from 147 to 168. That's crazy, bro. And not even, and on.
Well, let me also address this. Just in my personal view, Crawford, of course, although he was a little bit more at a disadvantage here than what Floyd was versus Canelo Alvarez, in my personal view, Crawford and Canelo Alvarez, they're still somewhat comparable in size. Now, Canelo, obviously, of course, still is the bigger guy, but they're only really separated by about a weight class and a half to about 2 weight classes. That's why I claimed that this fight was comparable to Sugar Ray Leonard versus Marvin Hagler. I mean, it just is what it is. People act like Canelo is a natural 168-pounder. He's not. And Crawford knew that. There's a reason why Terence Bud Crawford is not going to get in the ring with David Benavidez, but he was willing to get in the ring with Canelo.
See, I thought Crawford was going to have more of a hard time because he had a hard time with Madronov. So imagine going up.
Madrimov has better feet than that of a Canelo Alvarez, but I still thought overall that Canelo Alvarez, that his power combined with his skill, I thought that it would be a little bit too much for Terence Bud Crawford, but Canelo Alvarez was just exhausted by the second half of the fight because Crawford was just a little bit too maneuverable in that reach and that jab. Canelo just really was not able to get past it. Now, I still think that Canelo Alvarez was able to make the fight competitive. I still thought that he won about 4 rounds, but the thing is that Crawford was just too much for him in that fight, too skilled, too fast, too elusive, and it made Canelo Alvarez have to move his body in certain ways that he was not used to. So certain people may say, well, why did Canelo Alvarez not throw, 400 or 500 punches in the fight? Because it's a lot easier to throw 400 or 500 punches in the fight when you're facing a guy like Berlanga or Munguia, and at times they're running right into your shots or they're not moving out of the way of certain shots. But when you have Crawford moving out of the way of certain shots, you have to be a lot more tentative, you have to be a lot more patient, and on top of that, because of his boxing IQ, his reach, and his jab, you have to move your upper body to a greater degree. So Canelo was not moving his upper body to as good of a degree in the Munguia and the Berlanga fight. He ate a lot of those shots on the high guard, but he couldn't do that against Crawford because Crawford knew how to get around that.
I mean, that's crazy. I mean, but I don't want to take nothing away from Mayweather. Mayweather is the greatest of all time, but I think that was a really big risk that Crawford took, and then he ended up winning. You know what I mean? So you have to give credit to that too. I mean, that's a big risk. That's like
Absolutely.
That would be like me going up and fighting Usyk right now. Heavyweight.
That's actually a great comparison. It would actually, because Benavidez is really more of a 175-pounder, but he's someone that could easily fight at cruiserweights. That would be, similar to him kind of fighting like that of a Usyk. And that'd be a very interesting fight. But, I mean, just to be honest with David Benavidez, and I like David Benavidez. He seems like an interesting character, a decent guy, and he's a great fighter as well. But I just don't know if I see him beating Dmitry Bivol or Artem Beterbiev. Just my view of it, but we'll see.
It's been kind of hinted.
I'm thinking that right now.
It's possible, by the way. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but just from what I've seen with his skill set, and on top of that, what he's done at 175, I think that those guys are more than likely going to be a bit too much for him, but we'll see.
That Crawford took, and then he ended up winning. You know what I mean? So you have to give credit to that too. I mean, that's a big risk. That would be like me going up and fighting Usyk right now. Heavyweight.
I know that's been kind of hinted.
I'm not thinking of that right now. I'm not thinking of that right now, but.
In other words, David Benavidez is saying, ain't no fucking way that I'm thinking about that fight right now, because Usyk would whoop my ass. And yes, he would. Usyk would more than likely stop David Benavidez. Usyk is one of those fighters that is probably one of the most skilled fighters that I've ever seen. Right there with Crawford.
That's kind of like how that'd be. You know what I mean? So you have to, bro, that's a lot of, he has a lot of balls to do that. And not only to go do that to show the world that he's really like that. You know what I mean? So I respect that man a lot. I mean, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned just from looking at Terence Crawford. Always never give up on yourself. Always reach for greatness and stay true to your game.
That's definitely a part of it as well. But Terence Crawford just has something that most boxers do not have. He has an extraordinary level boxing IQ. Not only that, but Terence Crawford obviously is, he's obviously one of those dudes that is just a super level athlete. He doesn't come across as, say, the Roy Jones Jr. level type or Rocky Marciano or certain things like that on the surface, but he's someone overall that is. I mean, for him to retain his power and speed the way that he did by moving up to 168 and probably rehydrating around 175, 177, and he was able to put on a performance like that, it shows you how not only great of a fighter, but great of an athlete he is. He has to be put up there with the very likes of guys like Sugar Ray Leonard, overall Tommy Hearns, Rocky Marciano, Roy Jones Jr. in terms of athleticism. Manny Pacquiao.
Think about Caleb losing to Resendez.
Yeah, that was shocking.
Yeah, right.
That was really shocking, bro. I don't know what to say about that. You know what I mean? I think Caleb Plant, he's a great fighter, and he'll definitely he'll come back stronger. But it was probably sometimes, a lot of people go through stuff in their life, and he probably just wasn't hungry for that fight. He probably thought.
I think that Plant more than likely believed that he more than likely was going to easily beat Resendez. Just in my personal view, that did not come across as a Caleb Plant to me that looked like he thought that guy was going to be a true threat. And by the time that he did realize he was going to be a true threat, it was too late.
Be an easier fight. That's why with me, I say, bro, you can't take nobody lightly.
Absolutely. Terence Crawford said the same thing.
Because everybody's going to try to come and take your head off. If you're not training hard, best believe the next person is training hard, especially at the level we're at. That guy that Caleb fought, he was probably training extremely hard because he knew Caleb. He had been there with me. Caleb had been there with Canelo. And I don't want to say because I don't know anything about, I don't know what Caleb was, how he was training in his training camp, but he probably didn't take it as serious as he should have taken it, in my opinion.
I think that's very possible.
But Caleb is a strong dude, mentally and physically, and he'll definitely come back.
Yeah, it's always like, I've heard it before, like you'll get an opponent where like maybe fans think it's like a warm-up fight, but those are always like the most dangerous ones because like you mentioned, they're twice as hungry as you are because they want to be in the position that you're in. They want everything you have.
Sometimes it's a little bit harder because they're not as known and there's not as much film as them. So that's why with me, bro, I train all my camps are 13, 12 weeks.
Yeah, I always wondered about like why it's so long because it's longer than usual.
It's longer than usual, and I've got used to training like that. But trust me, bro, the more overtime you put in, it's gonna be better. It's like if you
It definitely can be.
train, and some fighters train 5-6 weeks. That's not shit. That's nothing. 5 weeks is nothing. I'd rather go into a fight knowing in the back of my head that I got a good. If I started 13 weeks, I got a good 11 weeks out of it. Then as of going in the fight, being like, fuck, I trained 6 weeks and probably only 4 weeks of those were good training. You know what I mean? It's better for you mentally. You know what I mean? I like to.
Do those thoughts like creep up in the fight?
Yeah. Fuck yeah. Everything.
They definitely do. But anyways, I'm going to pretty much end the video right here because I don't know how much more into the conversation, they're really going to talk about. But anyways, that pretty much is about it. I thought that video was very particularly interesting. And thank you all so much for watching. I'll post a little bit more as the week goes along. But thank you all so much, and I'll talk to you all later.